Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. Have you ever wondered why does it seem like some people can get things done with stakeholders? Well, if you've been wondering how to be a little more effective in doing so, you're going to love today's topic where we're going to talk about how to be more influential with stakeholders. But before we jump into it, please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. And want to give a shout out to Amazon best-selling author, our very own Nick Menard, in his book, Mindset is My Degree. Hello, Nick.
Hello, winners. Hello, Will.
Oh boy, so this is a fun topic, and obviously, whether you're in a small organization, a large organization, you're an entrepreneur, you're building a business, you're always going to have stakeholders, whether they're internal or external, and the ability to influence them can go a long way to determine success. But anything you want to jump into high level about influencing stakeholders before we dive into the meat of it?
I mean, it's key. If you want your business, your company to succeed, you need to be able to showcase the stakeholders like the benefits of it, and definitely numbers, because that's what dictates everything.
It certainly can, does it not?
Mhm.
So how about we start off right off the bat with one of our favorite segments,
Quotes and quips.
All right. First quote comes from Napoleon Hill, best-selling author. We've talked about him in Mindset Mondays in the past. I'd have a poster of his principles in my house. The quote from Napoleon Hill is, "The ability to influencing people without irritating them is the most profitable skill you can learn." Thoughts on that?
Well, you need to be going the right direction with stakeholders, because at the end of the day, they're the one who invest in the company and invest in your business. So the worst thing you can do is actually rub them the wrong way, because at the end of the day, they're the one who hold the keys. And that's why these quotes make sense based on our topic of today.
Yeah, I'll give uh, a more well-known saying, and then I'll give one of my dad's more uncouth sayings about this. So
Okay.
the more well-known saying is a little limerick, I think. It's, "A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still." So
Ooh.
that one, I've always tried to listen to my father, who, was in the Navy, appreciated his service, was not exactly very polished in his words. He used to say, "Don't get in a pissing contest with the skunk."
That's different, but it's very true.
Yeah, he's like, "You're not going to win." Yeah,
Uh,
something like that. So anyway, a little different take on that one, but words of wisdom from Papa. R.I.P. Dad. All right. So the next one is a quip. And the quip, it's unknown. I wish I knew who said this. I'd buy this person a drink if I ever met him. But because how often do we see this stuff? But anyway, if at first you don't succeed, redefine success and convince the stakeholders you meant to do it that way all along.
yeah. So this one, when you first read that to me like 5 minutes ago, I had a big smile because it's so true. At the end of the day, I don't say that negatively, but it's the case for every business, everywhere I ever been part of. You need to manipulate the data. You need to manipulate the numbers. You need to manipulate the way we do things to please the stakeholders and to please, at the end of the day, the board, and to please the C-levels in the company. And sometimes it's a little adaptation of what you actually do, but by phrasing differently or by showing a different, from a different angle, you can make the message completely differently that will resonate with stakeholders, the board, or anything like that. So 100% agreement with that quip, because at the end of the day, the most important is to please the stakeholders, because they hold the key, like I mentioned. So do the tweak necessary and turn your story based on what you know they want to hear, and you will be received a lot better, and you have a longer career and better paycheck at the end of the way.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I hear you, and it's a tough one because I'm always trying to give an unvarnished, unbiased view. Um, but I have seen a variety of folks come up and they display something really nice visual on a slide, and I'm like, something smells rotten in Denmark. Like this stuff does not add up, and it's like, and you start digging in, and you're like, okay, they missed either a big chunk. Now, whether they missed a big chunk intentionally or they just missed it because the data wasn't best quality, or there was some filtering applied and they missed out on something. But yeah, I've seen that a lot. Unfortunately, I'll give another of my dad. I might include these a little more often because he did have some sayings. So
One-liners.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This one is like when you have something, in this case, it doesn't look good and you try to dress it up and make it look good. He used to say, you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
I wish I knew that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was a hoot. He was definitely not boring to be around. That was for sure. So anyway, but going away from some of my dad's more colorful comments, we could talk a little bit about, I mean, truly about influencing stakeholders. Again, it's a lot of times all of us are working in teams, whether directly or indirectly, and so it's an important component. One thing I have found in influencing stakeholders, and it ties back to that Napoleon Hill quote, is try to find common ground first. Like, can you agree on the end result or the ideal destination postcard, however you want to call it? Can you start at somewhere where there's common agreement and start there first and then work your way backwards versus some people, they spend so much time like, oh, I got this well thought out plan and all these different steps along the way. And they think they've tightened everything perfectly. And they don't even get like a minute into the presentation already. They're getting like arrows shot at them and stuff like that. And that's why it's like, you want to get people involved in the decision, because if people are involved in it, they're more likely to accept whatever the end outcome is. But also, you got to start from a place where you have common ground, because otherwise, you're just going to find it's harder and more resistance.
Yeah, we talked about it during one of our previous episodes in Mindset Monday when we work with different, we all work with different kind of personality types. And so when you are on each quadrant, so let's say the four main quadrant, when you are a driver, expressive, dealing with analytic, amiable people, may be challenging. So when you are in a team and you need to come up with a presentation to present to the stakeholders, that may be challenging. But if we do what you just mentioned, by trying to have at least a common ground, you have more chance to actually build upon that and each have their time to present their part of this presentation. But it's oftentimes very challenging to find the common ground when we are all, different individuals.
Mm.
And it's not that one is better than others, it's just with different people. And it's very hard to find it. But if you want to present something that makes sense and that has, a way to succeed with stakeholders, you need to get there eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fair. That it can be tough to see where the common ground is. What I've found helps more often than not is just keep going higher. So if you're starting at a lower level, yeah, it might be harder to find agreement. But if you keep going higher level, like we're in the client success industry, right? So one of our key performance measures is client retention. Well, there's obviously a lot of ways in which you can augment client retention. And you might find if you're starting with the how, people may be resistant to it. So start at a higher level. Like if your organization is designed to retain clients in order to grow, like many are, start there. Now that's the 30,000 foot view level, but at least you get the start. So Dale Carnegie talked about in his book, obviously I reference this book a lot, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He used to recommend start every conversation or negotiation by getting a yes, yes. And what he meant by that was pose a question, even though it's closed ended, but get them to say yes twice in the very onset of the communication. And you'll find that the rest of the, whether it's a negotiation or a discussion or whatever, goes far more better. So I don't always consciously think about that because I've been doing it for a while, but every once in a while, it's a nice refresher as you're going into a stakeholder meeting or something. Start, if you can, with eliciting a yes, yes response.
No, I love that. And I will ask you a question. I put you on the spot.
Okay.
It's my turn.
There we go. Sure.
So, do you have any kind of concrete example in your career? Doesn't have to be in your current role, but in your career where you were in a stakeholder meeting and things didn't start well. So it didn't start with a yes, yes. It started with like something difficult to present, or maybe like a bad quarter or something happened. Can you give our winners an example of what did you do to turn the conversation from "Ugh, it's a hard start" to a way better ending, and how did you make that move happen?
Yeah, I one popped in my head right off the bat. And it was actually my first leadership role at the company we're at. And I was dealing with a stakeholder, and he was well known as being a very hard individual, very driven, very terse, not exactly the most fun to interact with. And yet, my team was involved in supporting his team's business, and it was sizable. And they were doing some things that we talk about having empathy, that it didn't really, it wasn't very empathetic. And actually it put people on my team in a position where they would fall short of their goals. And it wasn't like they were doing anything wrong, but they just weren't doing things in a way that could easily be avoided, that would have not damaged the partners that they had that were there to assist them financially.
Mhm.
And started in a conversation, and he's coming out both guns blazing, screaming about how this shouldn't matter or that shouldn't matter. And he went on a rant. I mean, I think it was like 6-7 minutes. It felt like forever, right? When you got somebody like raising their voice and yelling. And I'm like, okay, this did not get off to a great start. And I'm like, at first, actually, what happened is my ego started flaring up. I was ready to go right back at this guy. And again, fortunately, I've learned over the years to temper my emotions more often than not. And I'm like, no, that's not going to help anything, because what's that going to achieve? And I remember thinking, okay, I need to pivot. And I'll say the saying that I said to him that pivoted that conversation. I have one other saying that I've used that works really well, that I'll give as a tip to folks. The saying that I used in that conversation is, can you imagine a scenario? And what I did is I reversed the scenario of one aspect that he was complaining about. So he's complaining about there was high attrition in the team, and he was always having new people to work with. And I said, well, when we look at the situation we're talking about right here and how it adversely impacted my folks, can you imagine a scenario where somebody's like really excited to be partnered with your team? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, if they find out they're lying to your team and you guys have a consistency of doing things without regard to how it affects others, I mean, why would they want to stay? But in your words, why do you think they should stay? Like they're missing out on accelerated commissions. They're missing out on recognition. It's probably impeding their growth, their career advance. Not so. I mean, I'm just curious. Why do you? what would you say to them for why they should stay? He froze. He shut up. It was the first time I heard that guy quiet for more than 5 seconds. And that changed it. The other thing I would say, I use this one statement I'm going to share way more often. If you're finding somebody who's got resistance, or you're anticipating they're going to be resistant to what you're saying, I lead with, would you be open to? Because nobody wants to be seen as close-minded. So when you say, would you be open to, automatically their shoulders kind of aren't as tight. It changes their mindset subconsciously, because now they're like, oh, well, could I be open to? And it doesn't always mean that they say yes, but it at least gets a constructive dialogue going. And then sometimes there's a compromise found, which isn't exactly what I wanted, but it certainly wasn't what they wanted, and it was better than not getting anything. And so would you be open to is another one that I use quite often and is very effective.
Good. I'm taking notes because I also need to be sometimes more quiet.
It's tough. It's tough sometimes because we care. We're both passionate people. So it's tough for us.
Yeah. For me, it's a nonverbal. I need to be better at nonverbal because I cannot fake my face on how I feel. And it's probably a subject for another day of our Mindset Monday.
I just thought of a tip though I could offer you. You're very good with your poker face when you play poker.
Yeah.
You should project like, hey, I'm playing poker.
I know. I should think poker.
Because you do have a good poker face.
But I should, but poker is a game. When I go to work, meetings, business, I don't take it like a game.
Yeah.
I love what I do, but I just, like you said, when things are happening that are completely against my understanding of what good looks like, and I'm like, that's the opposite of what I'm teaching people or something like that. It's very hard for me to just have a nice smile and be nodding, but it's part of the game, I guess. But so I should really have more of but we digress. I digress. No, but it's an interesting point that you mentioned, and this was probably 10 years ago for you, or close to 10 years ago.
It was actually.
Yeah. So now, of course, your role expands. So you are a leader who is globally recognized in a company for what you're doing. So I will turn it differently. When you coach your people about how to position their position to the stakeholders in order to make a point or to get some approvals or something like that, what is a way for you to teach people to present something like this to stakeholders? Because we have a lot of winners listening, and I'm pretty sure that's a subject that they're very anxious to learn about, because we always want to look good to the people who hold the key. So if you can give some teaching advice about how to present things to have a better way of success.
Great question. I think I always start with know your audience, if you can. So what typically makes that person tick? What is the things that are important for them or their teams, if they're leaders of teams? That would be good. How do they measure success, or how is success measured for them? Because you have to know your audience and then speak their language. And I'm not saying if they're speaking Hindi, you got Hindi. I'm talking about what is the language important to them? So when we mentioned client success, and one of the measures of success is retention. When I talk to my seller stakeholders, I rarely use the word retention. I talk about growth. And that's just one example. If I'm talking to people who are in project management or a PMO office or operations, I'm talking in terms of process, organized steps, things like that. If I'm talking to finance, you want to know a phrase I use a lot when I talk to finance? Um, be my fiscally prudent. I say fiscally prudent a lot. And it helps because it sets a tone. So speak the language or ROI, obviously. I'm
Mhm.
talking about that too with finance. So I try to tailor I recommend they tailor the verbiage to the audience, know the audience, what's important to that audience, what are their mission critical priorities or what are their key success measures. And then again, start with the common ground, with their interests in mind first. So if you lead with your interests or you're leading with I think, I, you already are setting up things so it's a wall. So would you be open to how do you think this might impact your team or your success or being more of a higher rate of return or being more process oriented and organized and efficient? Um, it's bringing that. And then the last piece, high level, that I'll share that I think a lot of people miss is, and you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier when you have a driver expressive, you have an analytical, amiable, all the different social styles. That's just social styles. Sometimes how people learn and consume information differs as well with the social style as a way. And where I'm going with this is they need to tailor their presentations for both the hearts and the minds. I think people are very good at giving a lot of facts. It's like what in sales we used to call people who are ineffective in sales. They sell the features, not the benefits. Like, and facts will take you so far. And even the most factual presentation may not influence somebody to see your point of view because they may be more motivated by something that's emotional. And we are humans, even though I know some people act like robots, but at the end of the day, we are humans and emotions tend to play a role for some more than others. So if you have the presentation structure to have cast a wide net and you have things that are influential to the heart as well as to the mind, great. And then if you really know your audience, because sometimes you don't really know your audience, you don't know the person that well. But if you really know your audience and like they're like uber analytical, I'm not talking much at all about the heart or the
Mhm.
emotional aspect. If I know that they're a hugger, I'm not sending a lot of data as more of that. But I always try to start with both and then they can tailor.
I love it. What I would add is when you talk to someone and you know your audience, and you want to tailor a conversation, I like to start with, would it be helpful XXX?
Mm.
So you already, by doing so, the other person already like open up. Yeah, you mentioned the nonverbal. I mean, I mentioned nonverbal as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So you open up. Would it be helpful? Oh my god, that person wants to help. And usually they start with like an open mind, and they just more focusing because you start by trying to help the person, or you phrase that way. um, Something also, when you mention know your audience, you will not always know the audience, or you may not always be able to speak the language of the audience. And something I use a lot, I go to someone who know that you have a very good relationship or partnership with, and who know very well how to talk because of the success in the past between that person and the person you need to convince, or you need to bring your way. So I contact that person and I said, hey, I have a meeting with X. I know that you've been very successful in the past with some project or some things. Um, can you help me with a best way to present this to that person in order to have a successful outcome? And that's usually worked very well because people love to help when it's thanks to something they did positively in the past.
Hmm.
Is again, it's ego. Like, oh my God, that person asked for help for something that I was successful in the past. Hell yeah, I want to help, you know? And then after that, don't forget to come back to that person. Thank you so very much. It went well. Here's what's the outcome. I really owe you one here because so I do that a lot because I have a lot of, you know, I'm struggling with some some people from the other quadrants, and I use people that are a lot more political or diplomatic in their way to converse with a different style of people, so they can help me phrase things better. It's my third language. It's also something some better because I have like a very short dictionary compared to people who are born and raised here. So I try to find the best possible way to bring something up without that coming up like too direct or arrogant, because it's not my way to do it, but it's my way to express myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest to go to people you trust and have a good relationship who had success with that person in the past.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think, there's a couple of themes both you and I have touched on. You start off the conversation with questions, right? Versus making statements. I think that's obviously critically important. And you start off with questions thinking about their best interests. Think win-win. That's a Dale Carnegie or Napoleon Hill. Both actually. But think in terms of win-win. And I think sometimes people they're either so nervous or they're so excited about what they want to share. They go into the feature selling, and it's really pointed this direction versus pointed that direction. And they're selling feature. You got to sell the benefit. Like, do I care about the actual horsepower of my car? For me, not really. It's got enough juice to get me going. I'm great. I do care about the look of the car. You guys always joke about me getting my car washes
for
cigar bars, but for me, so if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, it's got X amount of horsepower," and if they're like, "Hey, do you like this red line version of the aesthetics of this?" I'm like, "Ooh." So again, but they have to ask questions to find out what ticks. So I think that's important.
And the win-win.
Yeah,
you win first. And then if you do that, you will probably get a win back. But if you start by, hey, here's what I need, the person may help, may not. If you start by like, what do you need? All right, I can maybe help you with this, give some advice, blah, blah. And then, by the way, here is something that I would need. Then it would be more open to give because they just get something. It's just psychologically, even some people may think, oh, no, that's not how I think. Oh, I think, but yes, probably it's helping still.
Well, one of the people that we work with, he has a saying that I love. Do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? I think some people get caught up with, but I'm right, or my position's right, or it's factual. And it's like, is that really what's most important? Or is what's most important, what is the end outcome you're trying to reach? So like, I could certainly get in arguments with people and support my argument. And all it's going to do is put up a wall, and we're not going to get any progress, and we're not going to make situations better. And especially for people who are leaders, you're a servant to your team. Are you making the path easier for them or not? It could go a long way in how you're having a conversation. So I don't care about being the smartest person in the room. I don't care about proving myself right all the time. What I do care about is, are we moving the needle forward in a progressive way? Am I clearing the path for people to be more fully successful? And obviously, does that equate to helping my stakeholders? And obviously, does that help in improving the business that I'm a part of? If the answers are yes, 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 then I'm happy to take a loss on a battle that I don't think I deserve, because I'm more interested in winning the war.
That's an amazing way to end this conversation.
So there you have it, winners. Hopefully you took a few nuggets. Sincerely want to thank my co-host, Nick Menard, best-selling Amazon author, and his book, Mindset is My Degree, for sponsoring today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow on your favorite platform. There's some topics you want us to talk about. Send us a message. We're happy to build it into to our curriculum here and want to make it useful for you. So in the meantime, take care and be well, winners. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye, winners.